Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to this 1-hour introduction opening week PD session. This will chart our course for the morning and our focus for the year. I am Rosina Haskins, Director of Equity Advancement for the West Hartford Public Schools. A title you may be familiar with is Director of Diversity Advancement. That was a title that served our district and its purpose well for its time. Over the past 6 months, we have reflected deeply as an organization on who we are and who we serve. And present times signal a need for change and a shift in our focus. I hope by now you all have had the opportunity to see Superintendent Moore's recorded welcome back greeting to all of us. Or maybe you've seen him in your buildings this week. Well, he is here with us in the studio. We are airing live streaming straight from WHC TV. You may know it as WHC Interactive. And he is here with us this morning to extend a warm greeting to all of you live and in person. Superintendent Moore, welcome.
Thanks, Rosina. Welcome, everybody. I wish we could be meeting in person, but this will have to do for now with such a large group of you. And I just want to say how excited I am to have you back and how great it's been to see people back in their classrooms this week. And I can't wait for Monday to see kids back in their classrooms, in their homes where they belong here. And with that comes this responsibility to do this work. And one of the things that makes me blanch sometimes is when other superintendents or other districts will say, you're fortunate to be able to offer that PD, or you're fortunate to be able to have Rosina's position. And the only thing I think about that is that's not fortune, that's a choice. That's an investment that West Hartford's made, that we're choosing to make a focus right now because it's so important that our students, that our community knows that they're heard. Now, what is good fortune is the people that we have. And having Rosina Haskins and being able to work with her for my entire career as an administrator, and Scott's with her today, and knowing Scott for 20 years, I know their dedication, I know their work for this community, I know their passion for understanding. And I'm so lucky that they're a part of my team, to call them colleagues and friends. So Rosina and Scott, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. It is an honor to work in this district. Thank you for being a leader who sees possibilities when at times it's easier to see barriers. So we know that you have a busy day ahead of you and that you are eager to get into buildings and great teachers. So thank you again for stopping by. We'll see you later on. Before I move on, I'd like to just give an important announcement and a reminder, just kind of a health and safety reminder and a disclaimer about our studio creativity. Jen, can we show our colleagues our health and safety reminder screen? Okay, so the beauty of being in this beautiful, spacious studio allows us the creativity of using multiple cameras and angles and lenses that, you know, give an illusion of more space intimacy. But we just want to remind everybody that, you know, safety is our #1 priority. And so we are adhering to the safety protocols for physical distancing and wearing face masks. So one of the constraints, as Superintendent Moore mentioned, is the necessary protocols. We're unable to be with you together, you know, as one large WHPS elementary family. So we are airing live stream, but we are adhering to our health and safety protocols for physical distancing and wearing masks. All right, so I would like to now introduce a special guest, actually, someone who will be joining me in this work, joining me this morning, and joining me in the Office of Equity Advancement. Dr. Scott Ratchford will be partnering with me in this work this year and throughout our long-term commitment. He is no stranger to the West Hartford Public Schools. He has served in many roles as a school psychologist and an administrator in the district and outside the district and across the state. He is a front runner in our equity, diversity, and inclusion work, and he is also a leader in family and school partnerships. Good morning and welcome, Dr. Ratchford. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. So would you like to share with our colleagues your hopes for this new school year?
Sure. This time of year is always, for me, one in which it's a mixture of excitement, trepidation, who's going to walk into my school and my classroom. And I guess I want to share that excitement for the year and my hope. It's always such a hopeful time, so I would share my hope for you that the year be one in which everybody stay healthy, and we know it's a different kind of a year, but you let that excitement and that hopefulness lead, that you really spend your energies on what is positive and what is possible for our young people, because this is all about possibility.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you for giving us hope. So I would like to just frame our morning together and just kind of unpack what will happen during this session and then and later on in the morning. So Scott and I are going to share our airtime, and we're just going to unpack our focus, our goals, and our purpose for our anti-racism work through social emotional learning and social justice education. We'll break in about an hour, and then we'll bring out our colleague, Ashley Callan, our district-wide curriculum specialist, and she will guide us through our second part of our morning activities. Now, we realize that we may not have thought of everything, so we have prepared a parking lot for any questions or comments that may arise. They may even be answered during your breakout session, but feel free to add your questions or your comments at any time during this session or afterward. So this morning, Scott and I were reminiscing about this time last year. So when we came together as one large WHPS family, we convened in the beautiful auditorium of Conard High School, and we greeted each other with handshakes and high fives and fist bumps and hugs and smiles, and we shared our summer adventures. We recognize that this platform doesn't compare to Jen Stanish and the band bringing down the house last year, but we're going to do our very best. At times, we're going to ask you to imagine, to ponder, to reflect on as our way of interacting with you. We have prepared a PowerPoint for you, and it is accessible for you to follow along while we will project our slides here on the screen for all of you. If there's something that you want to sit with a little longer, you can do so at your own discretion. But we'll invite you to activate some of the links that are embedded within and share your thoughts and comments. And we'll look at those during the breakout session. So I would like you to indulge us, if you will. Imagine or think about your favorite relaxing destination. Or maybe just a peaceful space, something that brings you calm. Scott, do you have that place in mind, that space in mind?
I do.
Okay.
I'm on a canoe somewhere fishing right now.
On a canoe fishing. So being on the water is your peaceful space? Okay, colleagues. Now, if you will, with me, take a deep breath in of your peaceful space. And gradually release it into the universe. All right. Thank you for taking a cleansing breath with me. Now I'm going to start our program all over again with a greeting. And that greeting is Kasarian Ingira. Kasarian Ingira. That means, and how are the children? It is a traditional greeting of the African Maasai community. Whereas we say, good morning, how are you? They say, good morning, and how are the children? They concern themselves with the future generation. They firmly believe that the well-being and that nurturing their children, that's their path to prosperity for their society. And the response, the English version of the response would be, all of the children are well. I love that. I think about that. Like, imagine if in our organization we greeted each other with, and how are the children? And we say all of the children are well. Now, it doesn't mean that children don't have productive struggle. It just means it's assurance that they are in the caring hands of a compassionate and kind, empathetic community. And so I just think about, what if that was a guiding principle for us, right? Making sure that all the children are well, centering everything that we do around the children, right? But I realize, you know, the adults and how the adults are situated around the children, that's important too, right, Scott? So, I don't know, so let's talk about the adults and ensuring that all the adults are well.
So we have a second word then we also are trying to push out into the universe today and recognize, which is supai, another Maasai word, and it means how are you? Certainly we want to begin with the children, but we also want to make sure that we acknowledge this is a different kind of a year, as Rosina said. We're starting this year with additional trepidation and anxiety as we enter into a different kind of a space with our children. And so we want to make sure that we ask, how are you as you start your journey this year as well? Making sure that you're well and making sure that you're taking care of yourself.
So I was thinking, you know, this year is a different year as you opened. And so I was thinking, well, what would this mean for our community if we're centering the children around everything that we do as one community, 1 year, but we're making sure that we take care of ourselves? What do you imagine that would look like? Like, what would be some indicators that all of the children are well?
I would think, just in all of my different roles as an educator, when I look into a classroom or an office and I see children smiling and laughing, that tells me that everything's okay. So I would like to see that. That would let me know that the children are well.
Okay.
So I'd ask you the same question, Rosina. When you look at a group of adults and we look at one another, what would tell you that someone is okay, one of the adults in our community as well?
Conversely, the adults would probably be smiling.
That works.
Even if they're wearing masks, you can tell it in their eyes, perhaps in their body language. I bet you would even hear a song in their voices, right, music teachers? I think you would see them, in the engagement would be cheerful, uplifting, you know, so that's what I imagine it would look like.
Love it. So to that end, we want to also begin with a right frame around our work as adults in this community and ensuring that you know that we appreciate you, first of all, again, for the work that you're doing, the commitment you've made on behalf of our children. It's always an important aspect of our work. I think all of us who do this work see it as change work and social justice work. So we appreciate you, but there's a different meaning of appreciate you as well. You appreciating you is really important, maybe now more than ever. And self-care is something we want to stress and emphasize for all of those who are doing the work this year. That you acknowledge your emotions first, that we make sure that we take care of our own social and emotional needs, and we give ourselves permission to be human. It's okay. Entering this work with some trepidation and some worry is normal, and let that go as you move forward into the work, but acknowledge it first. Practice non-judgment. Practice that you give yourself the space in which to go and make mistakes. I know last spring in my work with students, I had to learn all over again, as many of us are doing, a whole new set of tools and a whole new way to do the work. And it felt very much like, I'm not sure I know how to do this.
I didn't feel very effective, and I know many of us have experienced that same thing. Come at the work with that non-judgment, come at it with the understanding that you're going to make mistakes, but you're doing it in a way that you really care for children and their successes in all of those mistakes. It's all done in good faith. And care for your body. Make sure that you're taking care to give yourself time to exercise and eat well and sleep well. Even if the rhythms of life feel thrown off, that's really important. Use your resources. They're here around you, whether in your own families or here in our schools. Personal and professional resources are available to help you through this work. One of the things that we have to acknowledge is that we need to make sure that we take space away from all that's in the news and all that's in our screens and unplug for a period of time if we're really going to allow ourselves that space with which to go and breathe and relax and be ourselves. Socializing safely. I think isolation is a challenge in this time, and making sure we leave room to be connected to others is very important. Treat yourself. Make sure that there is something you do day to day, or at least with some regularity, that's just about feeling good. And finally, laugh. To Rosina's point, make sure that you leave room for laughter and joy. It is really an important part of being human, and in our work we need to make sure that we can laugh with one another and our kids.
Well, I feel like I need to make a refrigerator magnet of this for myself.
Maybe we should.
Yeah, actually we had a teacher yesterday see this and made a really aesthetic poster of it. So yeah, we could do that. Be creative in giving ourselves some reminders.
So we have both already talked about what a different kind of year this is. This is a year in which our community, our students, and we ourselves are entering into the space with our students in a different emotional and in a different mental kind of a place. We have a great deal going on in the news and out in the world that is going to leave us very agitated and morally and emotionally in a different kind of a place. We want to make sure that you recognize this is important, that our students are entering not just as blank slates, they're entering with that in their minds, and so are we, but we're in this together. This image that we selected is actually in West Hartford on the front steps of this very building, just in June, with our students, our staff, our community members, all demonstrating for good social justice causes and anti-racist causes. This is part of our work this year.
And so that was right in our own backyard, but this is sweeping across the nation, across the globe. So this is Naomi Osaka. She's a professional tennis player, and she's taken a firm stand against racial injustice. And this is Jaylen Brown, NBA player, and he too is taking a firm stand. Enough is enough, and what we are doing as a nation in terms of systemic and institutional racism, it just isn't enough. So this has implications for us as educators and here in our district, right? It really is a call for deeper action. And so it's a heavy responsibility for us right now. And I think it's heavy on our mind and on our spirit and in our hearts.
Absolutely.
And so how we come into this work is really important to think about.
So each of us enters this work in a different place, and it's important that we acknowledge what that place is. There's a nice framework that we will be using as a district that you'll see today if you're not already familiar with. And it comes from the work of Glenn Singleton and his folks with Courageous Conversations about systemic racism. It's important to see where you are as you think about your response to racial injustice. Many of us enter that from a response that is emotional. So if you look at the compass here, there are places that are on the bottom left for emotion. It's an emotional reaction we have to seeing some of the images around us and to the experiences of some of our friends and neighbors and people in our country. Others are more responding in a sense of moral outrage, and it is more about a belief system. It comes from our very soul as to how we respond. Others, it's more how we think about what is right, and our response is more intellectual. And others want action, and they respond by doing. They want to know what to do. And it's okay for us to go and bounce from each one of those quadrants and to enter this work from various places and to move from one place to another. It's all about finding a place to start. And that's really what we want to emphasize. It's not about where you are that's a correct place. It's that you begin this work and you begin this journey through one of those doors, and you continue and you stay in the journey.
So during the breakout session, we're going to invite you to really think about how you are entering this work, because it is really important for all of us to be attuned and prepared for the realities that the real world and real-time realities that we're facing and our children are facing, and being prepared to support them and help them and guide them, yet take good care of ourselves. So we have a way, a how, and we have a real purpose. And we want to urge all of our colleagues to think about how you can situate yourself individually in terms of an individual responsibility around a collective vision, right? And so a collective community, that is our way, and truly it's our only way. And so our overarching goal is this focus on anti-racism to become an anti-racist organization. And our pathway to that will be through two frameworks: social emotional learning and social justice.
So as with any work that calls for us to work collectively, we need to think about what it looks like and how it is that we're going to do that work in a way that creates a safe space and allows people to move through it in a way where they know that they're supported. So we've created norms that we want people to utilize that are important norms. Probably first and foremost is the norm of staying engaged. That this is really challenging work. It does touch us in many ways, but that we need to stay in the struggle, and we need to make sure that we actively push ourselves. Even if you don't agree with what's being said, that you recognize the risk in this type of work and you recognize the importance of the work. Participate by listening, sharing, and being respectful of those that are in the space with you. Being okay with discomfort is another really important norm. This is going to push on you. It's going to reach a place where you may not feel like you are in your comfort zone. That's where the good work begins. We have to really challenge ourselves to a place where we think deeply and challenge our basic assumptions in the way in which we look at the world. Thirdly, we need to respect one another's journey. Everyone is in a different place. We may be at a different position and a different place along this journey than those that are sitting one seat next to us. This is not about judgment. This is about helping one another. Wherever we begin, we help one another along that journey. And finally, accepting non-closure. This is not work that ever ends. This is work that really is about continuous growth and continuous improvement. And we need to stay in the journey as long as we are working with young people and as long as we're fighting for social justice. It's never really done.
Okay, so centering the students in our work,
Yep.
self-care,
Yeah.
the adults,
Like it.
right? And having norms and understanding how we're entering this work.
Yeah.
Okay, those are good foundations. I want to take us through another progression leading up to our framework.
Sure.
Okay, so I want to talk just a moment about culturally responsive teaching, or CRT. And CRT is essentially a research-based approach to making meaningful connections between what students learn in school and their cultures, what they learn in their cultures and in their language and in their life experiences. And ultimately, we have culturally responsive teaching is effective teaching practices that support all students and leverage them towards success. And so this wheel, West Hartford Public Schools has identified 8 effective culturally responsive teaching practices. And this is what we know best support all students, and they help to develop habits of mind that lead to success. And so this is what we know already.
Work that we also can draw upon comes from the Castle framework and our district framework around social and emotional learning, which underpins a great deal of what we're doing. we're human beings in relationships. Equity work is about effective relationships and teaching young people about how it is that they can better manage their social and emotional selves. And so the framework here for social and emotional learning has components that we will ask ourselves and ask one another to work through and teach our students to improve upon around self-awareness and self-management, around social awareness and relationship skills, and around responsible decision-making. Those are aspects of all of our work, and they touch upon how it is that we're teaching students not only to be ready for college and career, but to be the next group of citizens and adults in our community, our neighbors, who hopefully are effective in how they just live with next door to one another and with one another. And so in this work, again, we have theoretical frameworks, but we also have actual students walking through our doors whose backpacks are filled with much more than books. This is a really challenging time for young people. When we think about all they're having to navigate, all of the various crises that are affecting their parents, affecting the community, and affecting them, they enter with those experiences and those ideas partially understood and partially processed in their minds and in their hearts. It's up to us to help them to navigate those times. It's important that we not ignore those pieces of who they are, and that in their homes, we don't always know what's happening. We don't know what it is that they're dealing with in terms of parents' health, well-being, their own family's emotional state, and what it is that the family may be dealing with in terms of finances. There's so many factors that may be impacting our young people. We want to embrace the fact that these are challenging times, and we can serve as anchors for them in our work and in our buildings. And so there are things that we can do. We've talked about a lot of theory, but there are some things that we can do that we know how to do. And so we are always able to go and offer students some ways to feel emotionally and physically secure through running orderly and predictable classrooms. These can serve as islands of safety for children. Regardless of what's happening in their homes, we can create those safe spaces. We can create spaces that make sense to students. And by having predictability, by having norms and expectations that are clear, students find emotional and physical safety. And we ourselves serve as models. It's important that we never forget students' eyes are on us at every second. We are the adult in the space with them, and that they look to us for calm, they look to us for safety, they look to us for cues. So calm and fair and reasonable educators help young people. They help them to ground themselves, and they actually teach by their very presence and by their very actions. They teach self-regulation. So we're always modeling for our students. They're always watching us, and it's so important that we keep ourselves self-regulated, that we use those same tools in our own work.
So orderly and predictable.
Yeah.
That brings to mind like a saying that one of my favorite people, former HR director Tim Dunn, used to say, great guy, for those of you who don't know him. Mm-hmm. He used to say, nobody likes to be struck by lightning on a sunny day. And it makes me think about unexpected things and predictability. It is so true, because what happens to the mind is that it kind of goes into fight or flight mode, right? And when students are in fight or flight mode, they can't learn, right? And so we have a set of standards that we can teach, or we can use to teach and model for students how to respond when unexpected things occur. So we use this metaphor, thanks to my colleague, Carrie Jones, to unpack this set of standards, right? There are two sets of standards. Social emotional standards that were developed by the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. And they relate to exactly what Scott was describing in self-awareness, and also self-regulation, relationships, and that sense of community and community responsibility. They align, and we use this bridge, they align with a set of standards by teaching tolerance for social justice education. And they are identity, diversity, justice, and action. And the connections that they have with each other, self-awareness relates to identity, and that recognizing and understanding who you are, me, who am I, right? Diversity relating to understanding the world around you, people, the other people, differences in people, and having empathy for people across, cultural backgrounds and languages and circumstances. Justice being just kind of having that moral compass and that sense of responsibility within your community. And then finally, action. Action is you've developed interpersonal relationships. You come together around, a collective vision or mission to be agents of change in your community. And so it is very similar to the mirror, window, and sliding glass door. And being able to see yourself, understand your identity, see others, and then being able to go back and forth between those two worlds, your own and the others. And so again, we're grounding everything that we're doing in our equity, diversity, inclusion work. We're not starting all over, we're continuing the work. And so I just want to share a quick story. I was thinking about at a recent family reunion, a relative of mine, she's a doctor, and she says, Rosina, you speak as if educators have the hardest, most important jobs in the world. And I mean, I didn't have a mirror in front of me, but I imagine I kind of gave her like the stank face. Because it's true, we do have the hardest, most important jobs in the world. And so when I think of our cultural competence framework, it's a framework that we introduced to the district 4 years ago. And it's our continuum. We're always living and grounded in this. And even though we are shifting our focus more deeply on social justice and equity and anti-racism, we are still guided by this framework of cultural consciousness, understanding self. That's where identity comes in. Personal awareness comes into this. Cultural responsiveness is, now that I understand my own biases, understand prejudice and marginalization and stereotypes and privilege and power, how am I translating that or contextualizing or operationalizing that in my work, in my practice? And so that's culturally responsive practice. And then over time becoming a cultural advocate or an advocate for change, right, for social justice. So, this is a framework that was established and introduced from the medical professionals back in the 1970s. It was their way of wanting to have ways to interact with people across differences so that they can benefit and receive the services that they needed and deserved, right? And so while I don't liken us to save lives in the way that doctors might do, we certainly improve life's chances and outcomes for students, and that's pretty important. And I told her, every doctor had a teacher first. So that is our framework that will continue to guide us, but we also have standards. Connecticut has put forth standards for professional learning. There are 8. And so to inform our professional learning, we align with the standards for Connecticut State Department standards for cultural competence. And so this is something that we come back to so that we're not arbitrary in our growth and our development and our professional learning experiences. So essentially all of that to say, we have this goal to build capacity. We're going to continue to work to build the capacity of the cultural competence of all of our educators and just to really grow and hope to realize an anti-racist organization, anti-racist ways of being. And we have this year as this wonderful opportunity to really reimagine education and think of all the possibilities to reshape practices and reshape our schools so that we are more inclusive, responsive, equitable, and socially just communities for all students. And how do we see that? When I think of, and all of the children are well, I feel like we see that in student opportunities, student outcomes, student engagement, and family engagement is really important too, because our families, they're our partners in education. So we have methods and tools. that we're putting together and ensuring that teachers have access to. You know, we're asking educators to really situate themselves in this. You know, Scott talked a little bit about, you know, discomfort and leaning into discomfort, or being okay with experiencing discomfort. That is okay. That is a natural human reaction. But we want to give you the tools and the resources that you need to build skills and perhaps confidence to really, really tackle this really important and hard work.
And likewise, there are goals that the state and the district have established for social and emotional learning. It's about the how of what we do, but it's also, so our work includes our own growth and our own social and emotional well-being, but also then providing a safe space and providing tools for our young people. And so with social and emotional learning, it's about the development of all learners. It is about equity, and it contributes to their academic and career and life readiness. So it is more than just a set of skills that we want for kids to behave and to be able to get along in the classroom. It actually affects their life trajectories. So together, we can help students understand and respect themselves and others, acquire effective interpersonal skills, understand safety and resilience skills, and develop into contributing members of society. Again, I have a background, so my family is education, not medicine, and I have a mother who is a 50-year veteran. She taught high school English for 50 years and taught me many things about what it means to be an educator. One of the things that has stayed with me forever is she said, Scott, because I was an English teacher first, you're not teaching English, you're teaching children. And so our work really is beyond our academic growth for these young people. It is about helping them to be life ready. So we talk about skills, but really what we're talking about is truly building a community in our classrooms and building a community in our schools that are kind, inclusive, and safe. And this work allows young people to really feel what it means to be part of a healthy community and to grow within that healthy community. They're co-regulating by watching us, but they are growing in terms of how they understand what it means to be effective members and healthy members to contribute to that society.
So I love this, the visual, the hand, the heart in the hand. And you know, kindness, it's free. It doesn't cost anything at all, right?
So we also, yes, it's a state of mind. I mean, this is how we approach the work, that we have to remember that we are establishing a tone, but they also want us, there is some anxiety, I think, that many of us feel in going into this year and going into this work. I'm not sure I know how. And so we do have a set of recommendations and we'll be providing tools, but just as some examples of what one might do. Student needs first, safety and security. Students need to feel safe in our spaces and need to feel secure to learn. So how do we do that? Well, we've already talked a little bit about that. Our establishment of expectations and routines in the classroom allow children to feel safe. Establishing norms for kindness, norms for respect. And this year, in particular, we have some unique norms around wearing masks, for example. That's brand new to all of us. And so we want to make sure that that's done in a way that reflects that this is about being kind. It is about being respectful to one another. This is not about anything punitive. It's not thou shalt. It's why we do this, because we're being kind to one another and we're being respectful of one another's health and safety.
I want you to go back just for a moment.
Sure.
And I want to talk about the mask, because it isn't something we've done before,
No.
right? We're asking little ones,
I love that.
like, we're asking them to come to school with masks, with their faces covered. That is
Right.
so different, so new, and for some it's just, you know, it's uncomfortable. How do we, what advice do you have around like this mask culture and norms?
You know, I think that what I have found in working with young people is young people will adapt to what they see everyone doing and what the adults expect much more quickly than we do. And if it becomes the norm and it becomes what we do in school, I think that they'll respond by the fact that this is what we expect, and we gently remind, we show, we tell, we explain, we do all the things that we've done for all of our careers as educators to help them understand this is our life, and they'll respond to that. Again, it's not a thou shalt. It is about, this is why we do this, because we are really a community who cares. And I think that's important. So in terms of other norms and other things that we can do, applauding effort is something we have always done above outcomes. Really, we applaud the effort to wear the mask and do all the things that kids need to do in schools. To be an anti-racist educator and to be one who is really striving for effective social and emotional well-being and skills, we need to recognize and we need to value all who are in our communities and be inclusive educators. Intentionally build relationships. Leave room for that in the work that you do. You with your students, students with one another, and you with your families. That builds that space again for people to really know that they're welcomed and they're valued. Actively invite a range of perspectives and validate diverse content and points of view. We need to intentionally do that work. There are folks who have been working on the curriculum. We can always be spying and looking for opportunities to really think about how are we doing with the various members of our community? Are we representing them in our classroom work? Modeling self-regulation and anti-racism, I think, is an important piece of all that we are trying to teach through our actions. Think aloud strategies are something we know how to do. Telling students, when I watched the news the other day, I was thinking nothing. I was feeling. First, I felt really upset, kids. I felt really moved by what I saw on TV. It really hurt me. And then I thought, I need to do something with these feelings. I need to do something that allows me to do more than just be upset. I need to take action. That unpacking of our thinking and unpacking of our experience for young people is so powerful. We provide models for them that are so much more than we can do in almost any other way. We know how to do that. And then be vulnerable. It's okay to be human in front of your students. In many ways, our students are experiencing sort of chronic trauma. And we know that students really understand by looking at adults and watching how they move through traumatic experiences and emotional experiences, and they're showing resilience. So being vulnerable is okay with our kids. And then finally, directly teaching. Empathy and perspective taking is not natural for some kids. We need to make sure that we use our stories and we use the things that are in our academic world to really allow students to take multiple perspectives. We need to teach them to be active listeners, and probably as important as anything else in the way our society has moved today, we need to teach them how to express differences and manage differences in a way that is respectful. But that has to be taught. So we know how to do a lot of these things. We just need to remind ourselves. Some of this is just retooling. It's not brand new.
Thank you for those examples and those very clear illustrations. I love how you frame those as classroom opportunities.
Sure.
And it is essentially an opportunity for us to teach humanity to students and reminders of how to be kind, you know.
I think if we look for them that way as opportunities, I think we'll find them everywhere around us.
I love that. So what I've been holding in my lap, and I've been traveling with this everywhere I go. I should get it laminated. It's our commitment to equity and anti-racism statement. And it is, we released this over the summer to the public, to the community. And it is not just words on paper. It is our promise to our students, to our families, to each other, to our community. And it really just outlines our shortcomings. It's an acknowledgement of things that we could do better. It also recognizes things that we have done really, really well, things that we have attempted. And it isn't to tout our point of pride at this really challenging time, you know, to boast those things. It really is to give some context to what we have done. For people who are new to the district or you know, trying to understand our history, but also it serves to honor you, my colleagues, and all of your hard work and everything that you do each and every day. We're vulnerable here. We recognize that what we have done, it's just not enough because disparities still exist. So, you know, we have a commitment to all students, but it really is a call to really pay closer attention to students who may have been marginalized traditionally or underserved or underrepresented, to really take notice of that. And so we are driven by this commitment to our students, our families, and each other. So last week, Scott, there was a video that was trending widely among our educators and on social media. I know that I texted it out a couple hundred times. I want to set this video up for our colleagues who may not have seen it. I'd like for you to set it up while I get it queued up.
Sure. So it was hard to miss and hard not to react to. But just as context, you're about to see Doc Rivers, who's an NBA former player and coach. The NBA is in its playoffs, and with the playoffs come all sorts of expectations, all sorts of hype, and the players are not devoid of feeling and not separate from our society. They decided they couldn't play the game that was scheduled for, I think it was Wednesday of last week, because they were too moved by what had happened in Kenosha, and they felt it too important to make a statement about the actions on the streets, and so they went on strike. And so what you're about to see is one of the NBA coaches, Doc Rivers, speaking. He originally started out as just a professional comment about the strike.
Okay, fingers crossed that I can get this to play.
Our convention, and they're spewing this fear, right? Like, all you hear is Donald Trump and all of them talking about fear. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. We're the ones that we're denied to live in certain communities. We've been hung, we've been shot, and all you do is keep hearing about fear. It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad. Like, I should just be a coach. And it's so often reminded of my color. You know, it's just really sad. We got to do better. But we got to demand better. Like, it's funny. We protest and they send riot guards, right? They send people in riot outfits. They go to Michigan with guns and they're spitting on cops and nothing happens. The training has to change in the police force. The unions have to be taken down in the police force. My dad was a cop. I believe in good cops. We're not trying to defund the police and take all their money away. We're trying to get them to protect us, just like they protect everybody else. I didn't want to talk about it before the game because it's so hard, like, to just keep watching it. That video, if you watch that video, you don't need to be black to be outraged. You need to be American and outraged. And how dare the Republicans talk about fear? We're the ones that need to be scared. We're the ones having to talk to every black child. What white father has to give his son a talk about being careful if you get pulled over? It's just ridiculous. And it just keeps going. There's no charges. Breonna Taylor, no charges, nothing. All we're asking is you live up to the Constitution. That's all we're asking for everybody, for everyone. Thank you.
Every time I see it, I get choked up just from the raw emotion of this African-American man. What's been your reaction?
Well, I've probably seen it 12, 15 times now, but when I first, and it's still emotional. When I first saw it, that was we go back to the compass. My first reaction was, I felt his pain. I empathized with him, and I got choked up. But immediately following that was another emotional reaction, which was anger, to be honest with you, that we're at this place as a country, and then my moral outrage kicked in, and I wanted to do something about it. So It really felt very personal, and I guess maybe as a human being first, and then as a father and coach and white male, it hit me on several levels, but it left me wanting to make a difference and do something about it.
Yeah, so we selected athletes for a number of these slides, but this is something that everyone's paying attention to across many professions. But our athletes have a voice, they have a platform, and so they are elevating the voice of people of color for universal humanity. But in particular, you know, Black Lives Matter. And so, you know, when people say, well, you know, you're an educator, background as a special educator, I'm sure that all lives matter to you. Certainly, all lives matter. But, you know, when I walk out the door or when I'm watching the news, it's just not showing up in Black lives and how in treatment of Black lives and outcomes and life chances. And so I believe that until Black lives really matter, until we start to see it, we can't say that all lives matter. Until Black lives matter and we see it, that's when all lives matter. And I'm using I statements because I know that there are different positions on that. So that was heavy. I'm going to transition to some background and some context before we close out. So here, I just want to give some background to this work. You know, we didn't just start when COVID reared its ugly head and exposed a double pandemic. We didn't start this work in reaction to George Floyd, but we're certainly elevating it and shifting our focus in ways to grow and dig a little deeper. And so we've had a number of change agents, and if I had an hour to just name everyone in the district over the past summer, it wouldn't be enough time. So we have had administrators, curriculum specialists, teacher leaders answer the call this summer to help us to design a curriculum, develop curriculum design lessons for our community structures to provide our students with guaranteed experiences for understanding these realities and reacting to them and showing empathy. And in the course of that, we've developed some stronger partnerships with our parents. And so we see that as an opportunity to lead in this work together. And then finally, we have educators who have taken the lead to design professional development, including our breakout sessions. So you'll be throughout the year experiencing engagement with lots of teacher leaders as skilled facilitators. And so at this time, I just want to share a few resources. We are trying to develop a compendium of resources for you, links and books and readings and videos, and the list is long, but we're trying to make sure that they are relevant to our focus right now and that they're accessible for all of us as educators. And I've said you a few times, and when I say that, it's not to say that Scott and I are experts in this work. We are in it with you, and we want to be with you in a collaborative way to build capacity. But those resources aren't limited to digital or print or video, right, Scott? There are other resources for teachers to access.
Yeah, I think we all know how hard this work is, and we're all, as you said, Rosina, we're all doing it together. One of the resources we don't want to neglect is the human resources around us, that we have a community that is really working hard, and we want to lean on some of those folks as well and process this with those that we trust, but also know that there are people who are developing deep knowledge and deeply working through some of this discomfort to get to a place where they can inform our work. So we're going to work to identify some of those folks and who they are, and to help support one another. So lean on us. If we don't know, we'll find someone who does.
We've included a quote in this slide deck that I won't read it. I'll let you read that, but it is a quote from Jacob Blake's sister, Letitra Widman. And essentially, the reason why we use this quote is because people often ask, well, what exactly should we be doing? Scott gave a lot of great examples, and we'll continue to unpack and build more skills, resources, and tools. But essentially, really being willing to experience discomfort, being willing to learn and ask questions, apologize when you make a mistake, and to show empathy. The difference between pity and sympathy, empathy, that's really what we want to encourage among our educators. And so I'm going to close with this quote from our legend, the late John Lewis, and he says, "Get into good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America." And so we invite all of our colleagues to become allies and maybe even co-conspirators. I'd like to bring out one of our co-conspirators, and this is Ashley Callan. Ashley Callan is our town-wide curriculum specialist for literacy and social studies. And she is going to close us out. Maybe you can talk to us about what what this work means to you, and then tell us what to expect after the break.
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you first to Rosina and Scott for providing such a nice overview into the work that's been done and into our mission for the year. This work has been very important for me this year because we had a really nice framework in elementary for getting this work started. So it was really easy this summer to be able to integrate some of the work that we've already done and add in some of the social justice work. They just played together really nicely. So after the break, we're going to be coming back and we're going to be taking a look into the elementary teaching frameworks for social emotional learning and social justice. So I invite you over the break to take a look at the document that Rosina sent out through the email, open up the Breakout PowerPoint presentation and the handout, and when you do that, that way you'll just be ready, because we're going to be toggling back and forth through that as I orient you to the the documents for this afternoon's or for this morning's work.
Great, I'm excited about the breakout session and the engagement. So as we close out, Scott, do you have any final words?
I would say, again, we enter this work, I entered this work as someone who felt like educators do some of the most important work in the world, that we remake the world with what we do with young people. And so it's social justice work at its heart, it's equity work at its heart. I wish you good luck in that work. I hope that you stay engaged in a way that this is personal to you, that we take this work on so that we remake the world in a way we'd like it to look. So good luck.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, colleagues. It is an honor to work with you, to work in this district. Best wishes for a positive, safe, and healthy school year.
All right.
Mics are off.
this morning. Today we're going to, for the second part, we're going to continue the work that Rosina and Scott kind of started on this morning, and we're going to start
What's the problem? It's just a bug. Turn the lights off.
No, I didn't.
One more time?
Ashley, talk.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, you get to say we're adjusting our sound.
My apologies.
Sure. No, that's okay. Sorry, everyone. We just had a little bit of problems with the sound, so we're just going to get started now. So before we start our session, I just wanted everyone to know that we're going to be working between two documents today. So you'll have the elementary social emotional learning and social justice PowerPoint presentation that you have access to, and you'll also be working off of the handout that was also in the email from Rosina. So I wanted everyone to have those ready and available because there will be a couple of things that you're going to want to have access to as we're talking this morning. So if we can just take a look at the first part on the left-hand side of your handout, you're going to see that there are links to the social emotional learning, civics, and teaching frameworks. Those are going to be the key documents that you are going to be reviewing today. And I just wanted everyone to know that these documents that we're working from today really started about 5 years ago. So our civics teaching framework was developed by a group of teachers 5 years ago to be able to help students develop the citizenship skills needed to be ready for middle school. And this work was really important because it provided our teachers with a set of lesson plans that could be used throughout the year whenever teachers were able to find time in their schedule. And it was really a menu of lessons and lesson plan suggestions. What we did this year is we took those civics teaching frameworks for each grade level and we narrowed them down. We distilled them to just the most important information and set of lessons to be able to make it more manageable for you and to be able to provide you with a very specific and consistent set of lessons that would be applicable for all of our schools and would ensure consistency in the resources, read-alouds, and lesson plans that are used across our district. So when you look at our social emotional learning and civics teaching framework now, we've replaced that old civics framework that we used to have, and we have this now in its place. And I'm hoping that as you dive into them with your breakout groups in a little bit, you're going to see that they look very familiar, and you're going to see that they seem more streamlined. And we really wanted to be able to provide you with that consistent set of lesson plans to be able to help you in your planning this year. I also did want to mention that in grades 4 and 5, the civics teaching frameworks had always focused on government. Instead this year, while we still think that that's very important, we know that you have a lot on your plate. So we wanted to shift the focus really more to the social emotional learning and to our social justice work instead of to the local government work in grade 4 and the federal government work in grade 5. So grade 4 and 5, you are going to see a distinct difference this year in what that teaching framework looks like. But I think that you'll be pleased because there will be consistency from pre-K all the way up to 5 now in what's being taught. In addition to those teaching frameworks at each grade level, you also are going to have access through that handout to our matrices. So we do have a pre-K to grade 5 matrix that outlines the knowledge and skills for each grade level so that you can see how they spiral. So you have access to that today. The pre-K standards really do align to the ELDS standards, and they were the framework or the starting point for which we started the development of this framework. But if you wanted to break it down a little bit more, you could look at the K2 matrix or to the 3-5 matrix also. And you're invited to take a look at any of those documents today. The thing I did want to mention, though, is that this document that we created is not something it's something that we developed through our district, but we developed it under the guidance of the Connecticut ELDS standards and under the development of the components of social, emotional, and intellectual habits kindergarten through grade 3 framework that's available through the state of Connecticut. So this is a framework that was developed by the state through the guidance of CASEL. So these were not just things that we created on our own. These were things that these were frameworks that we thought were really important and helped to guide the development of our WHPS social emotional learning and civics framework. So I really just wanted to make sure that you knew that today and that you were comfortable with knowing where they came from. So we're going to talk a little bit now about what is the same in our framework. So just like in our civics framework before, our new social emotional learning and civics framework, you're going to see a lot of similarities. Second step continues to be our core resource. About 3 years ago, the Curriculum Council took second step and brought it to under curriculum review. There was a survey sent out to teachers which asked whether second step was easy to use and whether it seemed manageable and appropriate for our elementary students. And after the curriculum review, what we ended up doing is we ended up seeing that it was, when you compare it to other social emotional learning programs that can be found across our nation, that it really did provide us with a good foundation for learning for our students. So it will continue to be our core resource, and you will see it referenced in our framework today. You also are going to continue to have some flexibility in lesson choice. So we will be talking more tomorrow about what our daily morning meetings will look like. But one thing that is very important is that you will continue to have flexibility in what lessons are taught each week, just like you did before. The only thing that's going to be different is that instead of having a set or some, you're going to continue to be able to have that flexibility in which lessons you're choosing, but what's going to look a little bit different is going to be that you're going to have a morning meeting structure. So instead of teaching it when you can throughout the day or throughout the week, you're going to have a daily morning meeting structure that you're going to be teaching these lessons during. You also are going to have a consistent set of resources, read-alouds, and lesson plans that you're going to be drawing from. So these teaching frameworks give you the specific lessons that you need to engage students in daily. But that was never the case before. Everyone before was able to have a little bit of flexibility in what they chose in terms of lesson plans before. So it's nice that we have those consistent set of lessons and resources now across our K through 5 grade levels, because it does allow that consistency across both grade level classrooms and then also across schools. And the one addition that I thought was very important this year was the addition of read-alouds. So some of the feedback that we were receiving from teachers over the past 5 years is how important it would be to develop an SEL library. And the more that I heard that, the more that I thought that that was really something that we needed. So we created some lesson plans and some suggestions for books that are embedded now into our teaching frameworks in each grade level. And those read-alouds, I think, will really help to fill in the gaps that second step maybe leaves behind. And I wanted to thank 2 people for help this year in targeting what those read-alouds would be.
So I just wanted to say thank you to Ruth Leopold and Angela Gilberto for helping me this summer with embedding those read alouds into our framework. I think they'll be welcome additions to our teaching frameworks. So Second Step, as I mentioned, will continue to be our core resource. Second Step has about 20 lessons per year. That changes per grade level. In some cases, there are more lessons, a couple more lessons, maybe 2 or 3 more lessons. In some, there's maybe 1 less. We are going to be asking that teachers move through 2 Second Step lessons per week. We're doing that because we really think that it's important for Second Step to be our framework for the beginning of the year. Students have been away from us for really long, and as they transition back into the classroom, it's going to be important that we move students through the skills that are outlined in our Second Step curriculum. You are able to access all of the resources in Second Step digitally. So if you go to www.secondstep.org, you are now able to log in online. If you've never created an account, you just go right to that login page and you can create a new account. If you have been on Second Step before and are registered, you just use your username and your password to be able to get in. And on your handout, you should have access to a link that says activation keys. Those activation keys are going to be very important today, because if you have not set up a Second Step account, I would ask that you do that today so that you have access to all of the materials. There's only 1 grade level kit per grade level in each school in your buildings. I know that it's very difficult this year to be able to share resources. So if you activate, or if you use the activation keys, you will have access to everything that is available in person in that physical kit. You'll have access to all the materials online. It will be very easy for you to project on the smartboard, or for our remote learning teachers to be able to present materials over Google Meets. So it's really important that you use those activation codes to be able to help you gain access to the online materials. For our remote school teachers, I would just suggest that you use the activation key from your home school, the grade level and home school that you usually belong to. And that way we'll be able to share resources more easily this year. So the work that we have done over the summer that aligns with our social justice and anti-racism curriculum has been embedded directly into our framework, into our teaching framework. We wanted you to be able to see that there is a very natural connection between the social emotional learning work that we're doing and we're building in our students and our social justice work. They go hand in hand. As Rosina mentioned before, there's a very nice bridge that connects the two. So when you actually get a chance to be able to dig into the teaching framework, I wanted you to see that if you're looking for those social justice and anti-racism lessons, you will find them under each of the different standards. So the identity and diversity lessons are going to be found under Standard A, developing a positive self-concept. The justice lessons will be found under Standard C, develop an understanding of rules and responsibilities. And the action lessons will be found under Standard D, developing a positive interpersonal relationship. So the only lesson plan that is not ready yet, and you'll see in development next to, is our grade 3 justice lesson, but every other lesson you will have access to today, and I encourage you in your breakout groups to take a look through them. There are 4, I wanted to thank my team that helped me to develop these, Clarissa and Ryan, Dave and Melissa, Sharon and Jen, and Beth and Zach for their work developing these lessons. They're excellent. I think they really help us to provide that foundation for deeper conversation as students move into the middle and the high school levels around social justice and racism. And I hope that as you dig into those today, you see how much time and effort has been put into them, and Please let us know if you have any questions. There will be an opportunity for you to ask some questions through a Google Meets today, or I invite you also to put any questions that you have as you're looking through them onto the parking lot that Rosina shared earlier today. But all of these lessons we are going to take a look at through our morning meeting structure today. So we are going to be asking each of you to participate in daily morning meetings with your students. A morning meeting traditionally includes a greeting, a sharing, an activity, and a message. So I'm going to ask you, when we move into our breakouts in just a moment, to do the same. I'm going to ask you to engage in a morning meeting structure with your groups. So I'm going to ask you to focus your attention now on the handout that was provided. And if you look on the right-hand side of your handout, you will see that there's an agenda for your morning meeting today with your group. You're going to start, when you break out, you're going to start with a greeting. This is a greeting that's been modified to work in a Google Meets environment. Then I'm going to ask you to engage in a sharing, just like you would with your students. And then you're going to move really into the meat of our morning, which is this activity. I'm going to ask each of you to take some time to quietly and independently review your specific teaching framework for your grade level. And as you do, I want you to give yourself some time to really read through the document first. Once everyone in your group is ready, I'm going to ask you to use these questions to guide your discussion for the day. And then I'm going to ask you to move into writing with your colleagues a morning message that summarizes your group's discussion. And you can post that morning message right into our Google presentation today. If you move through the presentation, you'll see that there is a place for you to add in your breakout group's morning meeting, and they're organized by grade level just to make it a little bit easier for you to find it. So this is here in I invite everyone to be able to look at the morning messages that are shared by your colleagues. That's part of the work today. And another part that's really important for you to know is that your breakout groups are organized on pages 2 through 4 of the handout that you've been given. So there is an information help desk, Google Meet here available to you if you're having any problems getting in. I ask that you just find your name. You're going to click on the Meet and join that group and engage in that morning meeting today. If you are having any burning questions, or you don't understand how the teaching framework is outlined and you need more help or support, we do have this question and answer, this Q&A available also in a Google Meet format, so please feel free to join that if you're having any questions. But this time is really for you to break out into your groups, digest this a little bit, get a look at the teaching framework, and tomorrow you're going to have more time to take a look at this document again. Think about, okay, how will these lessons fit into a morning meeting structure? You're going to see that the teaching framework has been organized so that each knowledge and skill and each little lesson has a checkbox next to it. So we really do invite you throughout the year to just keep track of the lessons that you're teaching and just put a check on them. I think it will help us move through the year and kind of plan things out a little bit more purposefully. So this is your time. We want you to take a look at the documents. You're going to have more time to digest what morning meeting is going to look like tomorrow, but today is really just that opportunity for you to start engaging in this work with colleagues from around the district and break down those teaching frameworks. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We look forward to your feedback. Again, please feel free to post questions to that parking lot or to to join us for that social justice Q&A Google Meets if needed today. But enjoy the time with your colleagues, and we invite you to to take a break at 11:30, but until then, you can join your groups. Thank you so much, and enjoy your time.